What's up, YouTube? We back at it with another video. Today we gonna be reacting to the craziest drugs you ever heard of, and I ain't gonna. Hey, bruh, crack, coke, weed, bruh. No, bruh, we talking about like that. Feel me? Like that weird shit. That weird shit that niggas be taking. But anyway, bruh, we gonna dive into this video and yo, finna vibe out.
The craziest drugs that you have never heard of.
Bro, don't do
At this
drugs,
point in
bro.
YouTube history, I
Real
think
talk.
everybody has watched at least one video about crazy or obscure drugs. And while these videos are interesting, usually if you've seen one, you've seen them all. And typically the entries are rather surface level. Fortunately, this video is different. We're gonna cover drugs that are so random and so unknown by the general public that even super niche internet communities don't know about them. Oh yeah, and this list gets crazier
Hey,
as it
bruh.
goes on. Let's begin. Salvinorin B methoxymethyl
What
ether.
is
If you thought of
that?
salvia when you heard Salvinorin in the jumbled mess of scientific smart people speak, then you would be correct. But this isn't just regular salvia. This video is about drugs you
Bro, there's a whole 3 words to the drug. Bro, yo.
never heard of. And this stuff is way crazier than regular salvia. In fact, I think a
Yo.
good name for this would be super salvia. But in case
Y'all
you're
take
unfamiliar
that?
with regular salvia, let me recap quickly. You see, with regular salvia, from every trip report that I've seen, using salvia is almost a guaranteed miserable time. And even at that,
how
the bar
you-
is so low for some.
Bro, you really gonna take a drug that gonna have you like these? Bro, come on, bro. Come on, bro. Y'all need to lock in, bro. Don't do that.
That
Don't
even
do
a
that.
good experience
Don't
is
do that
pretty
shit.
much just not being as traumatized as the majority of people that take it. But Salvinorin B isn't regular salvia. This drug is salvia's crackhead cousin. Honestly, for all intents and purposes, this drug is probably one of the most cursed compounds ever made for a variety of reasons. For starters,
What?
the National Library of Medicine states that this chemical is among the most potent and selective kappa opioids known. And in this case, stronger is not always better. To this day, there has
Bro.
only ever been one reliable Salvinorin B trip report. And that's simply because even some of the most seasoned psychonauts don't want to touch it. Likely because it's a cursed compound with a ridiculously long half-life. According to sources, Salvinorin B is 5 times more potent than Salvinorin A and lasts for a duration of 2 to 3 hours, which brings using this
Bro, I didn't heard about salvia, bro. That shit, like, have your brain go to another reality, bro. Is that what y'all want, bro? So you telling me, bro, you gonna live a whole nother life and it only been like 5 minutes, bro? Real
into the
talk.
realm of sheer insanity. If you were crazy enough to want to try this drug, you would need to heavily mentally prepare yourself beforehand, because breakthrough drugs like salvia and DMT are known to cause
Alright, bro, we
This
ain't got YouTube
game.
Premium.
You're not ready.
What the?
time dilation, which means that your trip could feel longer than it actually is in real life. Time dilation is one of those things that's commonly discussed online, yet nobody really knows how or why it happens. In a post I
look
found
at
on the
him.
DMT forum, a user states, "I felt like I lived an entirely different life in the DMT world. It felt like 10 years or so. I even had a family." And if that's not crazy enough, another user commented
had
on this
a whole
post saying, "This
family,
happened to me
bruh.
on salvia, and I had absolutely no awareness of this life. I lived a whole lifetime in another life, and then zap, I'm in my bedroom. It was unsettling to me." And another user discussing his trip wrote, "What feels like an eternity only lasted 15 minutes. Keep in mind, this is just regular salvia, which only lasts 5 to 20 minutes. Considering Salvinorin B is 5 times more potent and lasts about 15 times longer, it's no
don't do
wonder why
drugs,
so
bruh.
few even dare to try it. So what happened to the person that did take this compound? Well, for that, we actually need to look at the research paper. Yeah, a research paper. The doctors here had the psychonaut in the study measure his dose
So, wait, what? So somebody took it and then wrote, I mean, that's understandable, but how you know that you gonna come back from that? Like, bruh.
in micrograms, which is extremely tiny. An average dose of regular salvia is measured in milligrams, which is
how you know
obviously
you gonna come
much
back?
more. The psychonaut in this study, which is basically just a fancy name for someone who likes psychedelics, said the following about his experience with Salvinorin B. "My head was observed to retract, and my face was frozen in a frighteningly blank expression as if I were having a stroke. My hands adopted a strange pose and waved around very slowly, alternately creepily awkward and graceful. peaceful. I remembered
Bruh,
none
like,
of this.
bruh.
Then, when
You
talking
rolled
about
over on the
actually
floor
breaking
doing all
through
type
on
of,
the
like,
chemical,
bruh.
which basically means losing track of your current reality and entering hyperspace, they wrote, I wasn't actually perceiving any objects in my environment. It was my mind that I was perceiving as a manifestation of the movement of a 5-dimensional object through a 4-dimensional membrane.
fuck does it even
Whatever that
mean?
means. Considering this was such a minuscule dose, I can't imagine the trip report someone might come back with if they took a full send level dose. Luckily for you guys, there is actually one other trip report on the entire internet,
Look,
although
Brody
it
only
isn't
took
reliable
this
as
much,
an
bruh.
actual research
Had
paper.
him-
This trip
had him
report is simply
rolling
titled,
over the
I cannot
forest.
comprehend what
Bro.
happened. And it's actually written by a career chemist who synthesized the compound himself, and upon taking it was transported into an entirely different life in the 1950s. This is his quote on the experience. I fell through my floor into an endless array of eerie sounds. I eventually reached the bottom and felt my body hit the ground. A creature walked towards me and grabbed me by the neck and said, in a disturbing voice. Then he threw me up and I landed. I stood up and realized that I was in the 1950s. The trip went from impossible events to me simply existing in a different time. I walked around on the street and found a newspaper on the ground. I could read each and every article, and on the top it read August 6th, 1953. I didn't know that it wasn't real. It was all I knew. I could remember my life, but it wasn't me. It was the life of a person that I was in 1953. I could remember my childhood, school years, first job, everything. As potentially cool as it may seem to almost time travel, this one part of this one story doesn't make this compound seem any less terrifying. 4-CMA. Like many of the obscure chemicals on this list, finding information on 4-CMA is not easy. That's because 4-CMA is a research chemical. If you don't know what research chemicals are, they're
So y'all in chemistry and taking the chemicals home and sniffing that shit. What the fuck is y'all doing,
basically
bruh?
synthetic chemicals that were Frankensteined in a lab as part of a research project in an attempt to either improve on an existing chemical or to create an entirely new drug. Basically, research chemicals are the result of scientists crafting random stuff like they're brewing potions in Minecraft. The thing is, most of these chemicals don't make the cut, typically because they either have terrible side effects or they aren't useful medically, or they just lost funding on the research. If the established drugs that most people know about are the tip of the iceberg, then research chemicals pretty much cover the rest of the iceberg all the way to the bottom. 4-CMA is a research chemical that was originally synthesized in the 1960s, as it was supposed to be a stimulant that behaved similarly to an amphetamine. Despite what scientists expected, however,
I don't even know what
4-CMA
that
had a much more antidepressant effect than stimulant effect in test subjects. But because it was mildly pleasant to use, drug dealers actually pressed this into their own pills to evade authorities. According to sources, 4-CMA was first identified at the Tomorrowland Festival in 2015, where a tablet was found in the possession of a drug dealer. Then it seemed to have disappeared, while a study conducted in 2019 reported detection of 4-CMA in pills once again. Now you might be curious, why is the slightly pleasant antidepressant on this list? Well, it turns out that this drug is highly neurotoxic to its users. In studies done with rats, it was found to permanently reduce serotonin, and in further studies done on it, it was also found that, quote, administration of 4-CMA caused a prolonged reduction in the levels of serotonin in the brain 1 month after injecting a single dose of the drug. In other words, it physically kills your serotonin receptors permanently. Now, to make things worse,
So you literally killing your brain cells by doing that shit. Fuck smoking, killing your brain cells. That literally kills your brain cells, bruh. Just to get high, bruh.
there are still vendors that are knowingly selling this toxic chemical with no regard for the general public. This is bad because these drugs can easily end up in a wide variety of recreational pressed pills that are sold on the black
what?
market. In regards to
Are
this,
y'all
in the
really
Research
taking
Chemicals
that, bro?
subreddit, one user wrote, "Nice. A substance that could fry your
fuck
brain
crack.
like only a lifetime of MDMA
Crack
use
ain't
could
nothing
in
to
one
this,
sitting,"
bro.
which I feel is pretty accurate. And it's even been reported that abusing this chemical could leave you with, quote, an irreversible depression that would be like an MDMA come down every day for the rest of your life. Although it's been speculating that reaching this state would require multiple large doses over a long period of time, if you don't want to take the chance at permanently damaging your serotonin neurons, I would
crack
strongly
ain't got
recommend
nothing on
staying away
this,
from this
bro.
drug. I almost want to call 4-CMA super MDMA, but it's really not the case. It's honestly just the worst of both worlds. The upside of MDMA is completely subdued in 4-CMA, and the downside of MDMA is amplified to such an extreme degree there is absolutely no value in the trade-off. Pyros. No, not the TF2 pyro. Pyros is an abbreviated word for the class of drugs known as pyrrolidinopherones, and they're pretty much crack on crack. If you
Crack on
remember the
crack.
bath salts epidemic from about a decade ago, well, pyros are to blame. They're pretty well known in the fringe drug community as being the most addictive class of chemicals on Earth. And when I say most addictive, I'm talking about 20 times more addictive than crack. These drugs are
Bro, y'all are taking 20 times more, bro, more potent than fucking crack, my nigga. Like, when does it stop, bro? When does it stop, bro? Like, when is the cap? Like, bro, death? Nigga, like, what the fuck?
absolutely insane, and they don't even hold a candle to the mainstream drugs known for their addictiveness.
Like, what's the
For example,
cap,
with
bruh?
commonly known drugs, most people actively decide to stop using it before their supply runs out. This is definitely not the case with this stuff. Barely anyone in recorded history has started using a supply of pyros and just stopped halfway through out of sheer willpower. In most stories on the internet, people who start a stash of pyros only end their days-long bender because they became full-blown psychotic and ended up in a psych ward, or if they're lucky, started seeing shadow people early on and got scared enough to flush the rest of their supply down the toilet. But this stuff is so addictive that I'm convinced somebody has flushed their stash down the toilet and then immediately gone sewer diving afterwards on a quest to find his precious like Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Because of this, even the most seasoned drug users won't take this stuff because the compulsion to take more is practically impossible to overcome. In hindsight, it's no wonder we had a bath salts zombie epidemic. Just to clarify, bath salts are literally just pyros. Imagine you're trying to quit a
Bath
chemical
salt.
that's 50 times more addictive than crack, and every time you make a stop at the
I'm
gas
talking about
station for your nightly Twinkies, a scraggly
shit that you
old
put
dude
in
in the
the
back who
tub.
smells like salami is tempting you to buy it for a couple bucks. The thing
that
about
a
the bath
Twinkie?
salts epidemic was that whenever authorities finally got around to outlawing the latest chemical, the drug lords that sold them would just hire some armchair chemist on the internet to look for slightly different chemicals on the dark web that kinda looked the same. Keep in mind, they wouldn't even know what the side effects would be. So basically, they were pretty much just selling random research chemicals to homeless people as test subjects. Because
Bro,
of this, a lot
what?
of people
They're
got
giving
caught
that
up in
shit
bath
to
salts
homeless
addiction around
people, bro?
2012 because they had no idea how addictive they would be. But that's not even it. The most diabolical aspect of pyros is that they make you extremely horny. I'm not joking. Like a 64-hour edge session with no break or sleep until you literally pass out from exhaustion or get
Like, fuck up. Forget a rhino pill. Take some pyros. Bro, like, literally, gang. That's
to urgent
literally
care.
what
They say
man
that
just
meth can
said.
turn you into a gooning degenerate, but this stuff is like meth times 5. To make matters
Yeah, child, it's an update on that gaming lawsuit.
this
I
is
know all the hours y'all
crazy,
spent
bruh.
playing 2K, Call of Duty, Fortnite.
Even worse, somewhere along the way, armchair chemists on the internet somehow figured to conveniently turn this compound into vape juice, which pretty much makes this invention the world's worst jewel. So the next time your mom gets mad at you for your vaping addiction, feel free to remind her that there's some 45-year-old dude with scraggly hair in his basement vaping super crack and jorking it for 10 days straight. The amount of gooning behavior pyros cause would literally make your
what?
average Discord moderator look like a Buddhist monk. Long story short, outside of their extremely addictive qualities, these drugs are well known for turning you into a D1 gooner. Like legitimately the Michael
D1
Jordan of gooning. From what I've read, this drug easily makes you the biggest degenerate in the world. Trust me when I say, pyros are one diabolical class of drugs. 5-MeO-DMT. 5-MeO-DMT is basically DMT's mysterious grandfather. If you think the sorcerers we talked about in the medieval video were mysterious, you'll be even more intrigued by this chemical compound. This chemical is sometimes nicknamed the God molecule.
I'm not touching none of these drugs, bruh. They'll shoot you in another dimension, my nigga. Like, for real. Like, real talk, bruh. You gonna live a whole other life, have a whole family, bruh. Dude said he took something and he ended up in 1950. Bro, like, bro, what? Like, bro, what? I can't, bro. That is mind-boggling, bro. Y'all is taking that.
Unsurprisingly, unlike other
Weed?
chemicals on this list,
You
this
can't
substance
smoke?
is actually naturally
Bro.
occurring. But this isn't found in a mushroom or tree bark like normal drugs. 5-MeO-DMT is naturally occurring in toad venom, of all things. I mean, talk about hardcore. Unlike the more forgiving and consistently spiritual trip brought on by regular DMT, whether or not 5-MeO-DMT is going to be a glowing spiritual experience or an existential crisis was basically a coin flip.
Bruh.
And that's a problem, because if you choose to inhale this stuff, it is reported that this trip could last up to 2 hours, which is 8 times longer than regular DMT's duration of roughly 15 minutes. And unlike most psychedelics, in which people usually report pleasant experiences when they use the drug with
That man
reverence
said
and
2
respect,
hours,
5-MeO-DMT doesn't care how nicely you treat it. And that sucks, because if you have a bad time, you could have a very bad time for up to 2 hours. Additionally, in my armchair psychologist opinion, I'd wager that a bad trip on 5-MeO-DMT is at least 10 times worse than a bad trip on regular DMT. To prove this point, I'm calling upon a popular website known to host trip reports. reports. On this website, there's a category for bad trips. For context, with regular DMT, some titles of bad trip reports include First Breakthrough, Ego Loss and Bad Trip, Accelerating the Evil and Ego Death, A Cautionary Tale, Unprepared Liftoff into the Worst Case Scenario, and Too Much for a First Time. Which, to be honest, pretty much sounds like they either took too much or experienced ego death, which is kind of a normie experience with psychedelics. Now, on the other hand, here are the titles for bad trip reports on 5-MeO-DMT.
Existential horror.